So, can I take the mask off? So, good evening everyone and welcome to the Embassy of Portugal. I will now give the floor to the Ambassador of Portugal to the US, Francisco Duarte Lopes.
Thank you very much, Sandra, and welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to have you all here, and it's a special pleasure to have Isabel Pavão with us today. You probably have seen that downstairs before you come up. There's an exhibition of Isabel. So we are surrounded by Isabel's artistic products. We have the exhibition downstairs, and now we have the presentation of the book now here upstairs. And Isabel, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you here today with us. Thank you so much for this possibility to have your most recent exhibition at the embassy. Through a whole year, we'll have the exhibition here at the embassy until March next year. And it's also a pleasure to have the presentation of your book. As some of you know, Isabel's book is about three cities where she lived: Porto, Paris, and then New York. And I'll leave, as we have Isabel with us, I think it's better to listen to her. She's the best person to give us the explanation. So Sandra, our cultural attaché, the floor is back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I would just like to say that we inaugurated the exhibition at the open house last Saturday, and we had more than 2,000 people visiting the exhibition in one day. Yes. So secondly, we are here today for Isabel Pavão's official book launch of Porto, Paris, New York, and it's an honor to have you here, like the ambassador said, and your exhibition and your book here with us. So this book is not only a delight to the eye, but it's also deeply interesting to get to know the artist's life trajectory. Taking the advantage of the fact that we have Isabel Pavão here with us, I would like to ask a few questions to get to know her better, her life's trajectory, her book, and her own art. This session is going to be streamed on Facebook, and it will be also available on YouTube. Please feel free to ask your questions to Isabel Pavão here in the room, and also on Facebook. I have the computer for that here, so I will check the messages. Yes. So Isabel, I would like to ask you, the book takes its name from your life's trajectory: Porto, Paris, New York. Do you want to tell us a little bit how did it go? Why did you choose those places, or why those places chose you?
Thank you. But first I'd like to thank everyone to be here, and Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for having me, my artwork, and Sandra, who did an amazing job curating the exhibition and all the events, and all the team, by the way, at the embassy. Because I cannot forget that last Saturday it was an incredible experience. I had about 2,000 visitors in the opening. I never had it in my life, so I came to DC for this, and this is just I'm not avoiding your question. I will answer now. Okay, the title Porto, Paris, New York actually is the cities where I lived. Porto I didn't choose because I was born in Porto. Later on, I lived a town south in Coimbra, and then I moved to Porto to be on the art school, fine art. That's where my life as an artist started, and my choices. I knew I would be an artist, so I pursued my studies, and I was teaching art at the same time. And then I moved to Paris. Then I moved by choice, because I was totally in love with Impressionists and the French culture. And of course, I like the cliche, go to France to paint. Even if it's in the 80s and nobody, they tell me, no, you go for movies, you don't go for painting. I said, no, I want to go for painting because all the painters I like are there. So I was lucky enough, and I worked hard I had a grant from the Ministry of Culture and the Gulbenkian Foundation, and I was very lucky because I got their support. I had a nice home, the Gulbenkian, and a nice atelier, so I could really paint. And since I was so comfortable doing all my research in painting, I said, let me get a little bit anguished. So I chose to do an academic career. So I went to university. Nobody asked me for this. I have the grant anyway. So I went to university and I did a PhD. In the end, it was a PhD, but I started doing a master's. And I lived there. I was very happy for 5 years or 6 years. And then I was very interested in the art in New York and all New York School of Art and the notion of space. I knew all this art from books and museums and images, but I never lived in New York. So I said, okay, let me get English again. Let me live this comfortable life I have, and I want to go to New York. So how I came to New York is another story, because coming as an artist, I thought it would be very risky. So I wanted to be a student, because I think it's a better role. And it's true, we are always learning. So I went to NYU, my first time in New York. I found that Washington Square, and I said, okay, I'm going to see if there's an academic program on the arts. So they had a program, a Doctor of Arts. I said, okay, I'm going to work on this. I'll make a project related to my art and my research, and I'll try to come to New York. Sure enough, 2 years later, I was in New York. So the title of the book is really the first city I didn't choose, the second I chose, and the third I chose, and it's about my artistic career since the very beginning until practically now.
Very well. Thank you, Isabel. And do you remember how it all started for you? How did you get interested in the arts in the first place?
That I have to say, I was born a bit with that, because I had a big influence from my mother. My mother was an artist, and maybe I think that was the biggest influence. She always encouraged me to be what I want to be, and I have lots of not great artwork at home, and I did not have access to real good museums, but I had access to very good books. So I had all the art books. When I was 5 years old, I knew Picasso, all these, whatever he did, I was very influenced by him. I knew the surrealists, I knew all these. So I was very, very encouraged since I was very small, and from then on it was just, so I think it started at home, basically.
Very interesting. And now coming to the book that we have here today and that we are launching for the first time in the US. So I wanted to ask you, how did it materialize? How did the book come to life?
That's a good question. Number one, I think you see the stamps, New York, Porto, Paris. I want to put Washington because it comes to Washington before New York. And actually we put the stamp, Washington stamp here. Washington, D.C. The process is very curious, because I think maybe 7 years ago I started thinking, well, I'm approaching substantial time as a professional artist. I have many exhibitions all over the world in many places. I have catalogs, books, I have projects I did. And I said, maybe it's time to start gathering the text. I think I'm more important, some more in French, some more in Portuguese, more in English. Get that together and also go back to my artwork from the beginning that was somehow hidden. I wanted to revisit all my trajectory. I did not want this book to be a coffee table book that you just admire for the images. I wanted it to be about the process. How do I go from A to B, and more of an experimental thing. So in this book you will find many pictures of me in my atelier, me doing some drafts for studies and etc. So it started that way. Then I had, of course, an art critic I like very much, Laura Castro in Portugal. And she was interested in curating a retrospective exhibition and the book to go along with it. So she helped me, number one, doing an introductory text, interviewing me about my process. This is the first text in the book. And then we chose artwork I let her choose a lot of it because I have not enough business with what I do. I wanted somebody who could, with their own perspective, choose the artwork. And this took about, I would say, 4 or 5 years, because in the meanwhile, we have all the translations to do, the choices to make, go back to Porto in the small atelier full of dust and many things that I forgot I have. And she said, oh, I love this. I said, oh my God, I don't like this at all. But things like this. It was very interesting. So we had it all photographed. In the meanwhile, COVID happened. The book is ready to go to print, and I'm ready to have the exhibition in Portugal. So the exhibition was delayed. It happened just now, a few months ago. But the book, somehow, they told me, no, we stopped the book because the exhibition is not happening. And I said, no, the book has a life of its own. This is about my artwork, and God forbid the world ends tomorrow. I want to have that book printed. So the book came out without exhibition, without nothing, without launches, but I was so happy when I see all these books coming home and having them. So this is a little bit the story about the book. I don't know, then of course I'll be very happy if you ask me questions or something like that.
So I would just like to remind you the possibility of posing questions to Isabel Pavão here in the room. Please just raise your hand. This is a conversation and it's interactive. And Mafalda will give you the microphone so that you can pose a question. And on Facebook, please just write your questions on the chat box, and we will answer the questions here. So, meanwhile, we don't have questions. I'm going to pursue with my questions. So, Isabel, some art schools and some schools of art which you took inspiration from are evident in your work. I mean, like Impressionists, Malevich, Rothko, and others. But accordingly to you, who are the artists and schools of art which inspired you to do the Impression series we have here downstairs at the gallery, specifically?
Okay. I would say there are two main components of my inspiration. One of them is certainly art schools and artists. I was very keen always, not only on impressions, about Impressionism. Actually, the name Impressionism on my work, Impression, comes from Monet and the series, the fact that he was working on series. Initially, I got series from the minimalists, and then I go back in history, and I said, no, Monet was doing it, and it's very... So, I would say Monet. I would say one thing that is always present in my artwork anyway, it's the Pointillism. I will go to Seurat because he wrote theories about art, and I always like artists write about art, and it sounds familiar to me. And also Albers, Homage to the Square. So there's some artists that influenced me. But there is another part that also is very important, is the poetic dimension. I always was interested in poetry and the poetic dimension. And in fact, there's one person here today with us, Catherine. We did a project that is linked to this series, and we did it together. The heart is a drowning object, and it's certainly a collaboration with a poet, with poetry. She did her poetry, I did my artwork, and they married together. Independently, we published e-book or art book, and she's in the book here actually. Sorry, Kathleen, but while here, and I want to show that we did things together, and it's downstairs. It's part of that Impression series here, all the artwork and the poetry together. So I do collaborations with. I'm very proud of the work we did together, and we're still working on it. There's one painting out downstairs that actually inspired the cover of this book. You see a butterfly. It is in the book. I'm not showing you in the book because you can see it downstairs. But it was also a collaboration I did with Nuno Judis, which is a Portuguese poet, and he's translated in many languages. We published the book, and there's one painting that has a poem. We didn't put the poem on the wall because I thought it would be, I'd like to do something only with, like, with him or with Catherine. So, so I don't know, but Impressions definitely has these two components. One is the reference to art history and conceptual, because I always take into account what I know and what I see, and many artists inspire me, but also the poetic dimension, which is a dimension that for me it's more of the intuitive order of your feelings, the imprint, state of mind, and to sing. So that's, I would say, my main inspirations for this series.
Thank you. And it is very interesting that in the series Americana, that you can also see in the book, you got inspired by the field tradition in America, and that it was done by women.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a bit about this series?
Actually, it will be a pleasure to talk about it. We just came from this morning we went to the American Museum, and we saw. I was reminded that to me it happened totally by chance, not by chance. My husband collects American art, so I was always fascinated by the shapes, the geometry that was there well before abstraction as we know it, and all this abstract art with geometry. We have it in before we were Americans, people were doing this, in many other cultures by the way. But also by chance I found in an auction pieces of a quilt, not sewn together, but all these squares with the leaves and all these symmetries, and it's totally, I felt very inspired by it because I work that way with patterns and symmetries and shapes. So I decided to do a whole series called Americana Series, honoring this work done by women, and probably first settlers, I think it was 16th, 17th century, coming from Europe. This undervalued work, in my opinion, it was domesticity, and I wanted to give them aesthetic value as you look at the painting and put them in those paintings with those geometric forms. And I also did, because I like to include that, some text about feminist text about women and so on, because I thought it would be apropos. So this series, actually, they traveled a lot. It's not here downstairs because it's a show in itself, but I'm showing some of those works in my next show. So going back, this was maybe 10 years ago, I think. But thank you for asking about that.
No, it's very interesting. And Isabel, now going back to the exhibition we have here at the Gallery of the Embassy of Portugal, do you want to talk about the process of putting the exhibition together? That we did it together? But
Absolutely. It was very interesting. I owe to Sandra. Both of us, we cooked together. We cooked the show. I did not know the space here. And we were meeting during COVID. We were having these video, WhatsApp video in my atelier every week. And she would come down to the space, she would show me the walls. And I thought, what shall we put in there? And we kept on going back and forth. And I was in my atelier, I would show her, shall we use those paintings? Shall we use, right? It took us, we've been talking about this for 2 years maybe, I think. Because we wanted the artwork to fit in the space that would make sense and so on. So she was patient enough, and we were motivated enough. And finally, something that looks so simple, once you see them on the walls, it was not simple at all. We were, don't you agree?
I agree.
Measuring, putting them together, and I have to say, I had some questions about having wood walls. I never had my artwork on brown walls. You have it, but no. But I said, I don't know if my paintings will work on this thing. So I was happily surprised. I think they really work. I'm very happy about it. But I have to thank you, Sandra, for also faith and enthusiasm, because we certainly were enthusiastic about it. And I have to thank all the team here at the embassy, because everybody was extremely helpful. Do you have anything to say that I was, like in Portuguese we say, chata?
No, not at all. I don't know. It was very interesting to do this process with Isabel. And now that the exhibition is here and the book is being launched today, we don't know what we are going to do because we have to talk every week because we have like a meeting every week. I don't know how we will do it from now
We're
on.
not planning the next one.
And I'm sure you will want to know news about how is the exhibition going, so I think we will
So,
proceed with our weekly
video
calls. Exactly. You're very welcome. And Isabel, during COVID, you were able to produce lots of work, right? So therefore, I know you have new projects. Do you want to talk about them?
May I? Will you be interested to know? Well, this is it's interesting, the concept of time, because when I worked on this book, it was present. I was very happy to review what I did, having my work out for people to look at, and it was pretty recent. Everything, all the old ones know, but the fact that everything was together. So COVID came, and the book was in boxes. The artwork that was chosen for these shows was also waiting to be shown. So I didn't have that exposure to look at my own artwork and make the revision I wanted to make. It was to look at everything and say, where am I going now? Because generally that's what these cycles, that's how they happen. So since there was none of that, it was only expectation and being I certainly had the time and also the motivation, because during COVID I was inspired, I had some losses because I couldn't see, and I started working on a new series of artwork. It's called Impressions also, but this time is inspired by my childhood garden of camellias and lemons. My father planted lemon trees in our garden. We have camellias, we call it in Portugal, roses of winter, because they bloom in cold weather. And I was fascinated, and I was looking at the paintings of Zurbaran and the lemons, and I said, I'm going to work on lemons, because lemons survived, and I did lots of research. They come from the Middle East and Indian old traditions and religion, and I find out that the lemons is a symbol of resilience, and it goes with times we've been going through. And the camellias too, the history of camellias in Portugal. Camellias come from Japan, from China. Eventually in Porto, there's somebody by mistake brings camellias thinking they are making tea, and they are beautiful camellias, not for tea. So he imports a lot of camellias. So in Porto we have the most wonderful gardens of camellias, and we start exporting all over the world. So there's a whole trading story. So that's what I'm working on. And I'm very excited, and I have lots of artwork, but I would need to now get to the next step, but I've been working.
So nature really is something that inspires you. Of course, as an artist, you are prone to be inspired by many, like whatever is surrounding you. But it looks like nature, it has something in your.
Absolutely, I think nature is, especially now that I have the luck of having a studio with a beautiful garden and see all this. I certainly appreciate nature. I think it has an influence, even if I see. I think, no, I'm conceptual, I'm studying, I got my mind full of all these things and artwork, and I go to museums all the time and see other artists and see exhibitions. But in the end, nature, I think it's very inspiring, I have to say, yes. But also it has a quality, a psychological quality. In this case, when I started doing my childhood garden, I have no idea where that would lead me, for many other things. But it started by a tree and another bush that I grew up with, and now it has lots, and I still have. We have a nice lemon tree that gives lemons all year round. We take lots of care in and out in winter, and we have camellias and so on, but it's nature, of course. But then I cannot, I will go and look at art and see all the camellias there are, and all the lemons, who did lemons, who did. So it's, but yes, nature has an influence.
Good. So, any questions for Isabel Pavão? This is your last chance. But we have here on Facebook. We have some comments. People saying that thank you for You have a good presentation. Congratulations to Isabel Pavão and the embassy for sponsoring the event from Edgar João. And Leonor Alvin Brazão is asking, having so many cultural influences in your life, how is your Portuguese essence expressed through your art?
That's a very good question. Thank you. It's interesting. When I moved out of Portugal, I went to Paris. I always thought of myself Portuguese and European. I never thought really about the fact that being Portuguese would have a great influence on me because we were interested in all kinds of cultures where I come from. So I was proud to be Portuguese, but I was a sponge, absorbing everything I could from other cultures. And finally I come to New York, and that's when I realized, I think I am European. Because especially doing the academic work, way of thinking, way of structuring work and so on, I said maybe I'm not as of the world as I thought I'm more. But no, I think Portuguese essence absolutely comes through what I do. Some art critics said it. I'm Portuguese, I'm proud to be Portuguese, and I think being a Portuguese artist in itself, I'm representing my country and my culture, but not necessarily with the icons of Portuguese culture as I say more folk, or which I love, but I think I represent Portugal, and I'm Portuguese in that sense that the Portuguese were always very curious about other cultures, never losing their identity, but always learning with everything they can from other people. And that for me is the best quality, and I hope my painting represents that too in a way. It's about identity, but also alterity, being able to absorb every culture and every identity you want. So that's how I don't know if I answered your question, but yes, I'm Portuguese, but yes, I'm American too.
And we have also here Luisa Andrade that is clapping, and we have Maria Briscoe Benton that is saying wonderful. We have some people watching us on Facebook. And so I have a couple more questions, but if you have more questions, you have just a moment, because we will bring you the microphone so that people on Facebook, they can hear.
I feel like you have special color choice. I think there are Isabel Pavão colors. Yes, I think I just don't pick random colors. You work on color, and they're your own colors. So do you want to talk to us about the process of, because you overlap with colors to get somewhere?
Well, thank you for your question, especially coming from another artist. I really appreciate it. I use in my artwork definitely a technique that is very much pointillism. So the idea that you put one dot with another dot, and then you have this magic trick in your eye, and this is something else. I like to superimpose things, not only with that technique, but I tend to be very obsessive. I paint, and I repaint, and I repaint. So it means that if I start with a red and a gray, or it will become something else. I have a tendency sometimes to work with like these colors, pastel, dark, lots of black. Sometimes I have one admirer that tells me in my studio, how come everything is so dark? I don't know. When I choose a color, it's not with a specific purpose. It doesn't have a specific meaning. It's a mood. Is it nature? Maybe. Because in the winter things get grayer and darker. Sometimes my mind gets grayer and darker. But then there will be a red dot somewhere or a pink dot, which is... so I think I use all the colors. I have lots of colors, like you must have too. But I go through phases that I tend to use more grayish tones or not so, more subtle. But actually now I'm working with bright reds and yellows and so on. I also think that sometimes there's a chance plays a role, and I like to have that chance coming, because during this summer I was painting and then I have this big jar of liquid X, which is a very nice brand of paint, acrylic red. I said, this red, maybe it's going to dry, let me use it. So you take risks too. Sometimes we think that, but I like colors in general. All artists do, I think, but sometimes it's art, sometimes it's more visual. I don't know if that's your question.
And then,
When I look at your work, there seems sort of I like to get inside the artist's head, and it seems to me that you, first of all, you may plan your work ahead of time. I don't know if you do, but it's the discovery. It's that there seems to be a fascination on your part of seeing what comes out of the different techniques, and whether you scratch and re-scratch the surface, or whether you superimpose your dots. And is that true? Is that part of your process, is discovery?
Elizabeth, thank you for your question. Yes. I think it's true. I have that sense of wonder. I have also a vocabulary that I repeat endlessly in my paintings. Across the square, the dots. There's some things that are always there. I work on series, which means I like to repeat systems, but I also like the fact that things are never the same. And with that in mind, I'm always wondering what is it going to be. There's always some risk. And some things I plan ahead because that's my way of structure, the artwork and the series. I think a lot about it, I make a lot of drafts and so on. But there's also this sense of wonder, because without it, I don't think, at least for me, it would be senseless in a way. So I have that sense of wonder and also rediscovering what is underneath. That time that we have, if you have time to look at something, discover what comes up, because it's not obvious. I like to work on things that are not obvious to the eye. You see a shape, and then you start looking, and eventually, if you have interest, it will come out. So, I don't know if I answered your question. Thank you.
another question here.
Isabel, I've always wanted to ask artists this because you brought up a project where we did a collaborative effort, and you work with color and images, and you were, I think, starting to for what comes up. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how language informs what you do as well, especially since you've studied a lot about art. And then I guess the second part of that, because you have collaborated not just with me but with other poets, what is that experience in working with language for you, either by yourself or in collaboration?
Thank you for that question. Actually, I think language is part of my language as an artist, language itself. In fact, I have a series of, it's called Linguistic Boundaries. Basically what I did after my PhD, a lot of papers, I decided I'm not going to throw it out, I'm going to put it in paintings. And that's exactly what I did, and dictionaries and so on. That is a more literal sense of using the literature, poetry. But then, when I'm collaborating, like I did with you, it certainly had a big influence. The language, certain words, what you say, what we talk about, and then incorporate it in my paintings. And actually, having some other paintings, I've written poetry on them too. So there's definitely a big link to literature and poetry, and I think it's part of my language as an artist. I don't know if I answered, but that's inside my... Also, I'm an avid reader. I consume a lot of books. So, eventually, there's parts of books that I want to incorporate, or ideas that I want them to be part of the artwork.
Isabel, I'm curious also, how did each of these unique, wonderful cities influence you? Both your, the work of the artist, the skill, the technique, but also, alluding to the person of the artist. What is in your mind as you work? What is in your heart as you work? How did each of these cities contribute to your development and your work?
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you. I would say there's certainly the fact that I moved to a different cultures. In Porto, okay, I was home somehow, but I was things changed for me when I was living there, and especially when I was teaching. I said, well, I have to really go and find out, put myself in a different situation so I can learn things differently. So Porto was part of me growing up in a culture, but always with an eye on in the future somewhere else. So Paris had a great influence on me, but when I went to Paris, that's what I wanted. So you have a desire, and you are exposed, and then of course you meet people, you meet cultures, you meet ways of thinking, and naturally I think that have a lot of influence in my case, the culture itself, and being immersed in that culture is totally different from reading books or looking at watching people talking. You live day by life, and you have access to the Louvre every day if you want, or if you can, or the Pompidou, and of course that will influence you. And then I came to New York. I think it was the biggest influence as coming out of the European way of thinking. And when I came to New York, I realized New York, number one, I don't think it's America. In the sense, New York is very cosmopolitan. You have all the cultures. And so that certainly had a lot of influence in my artwork and in the way of thinking, because I was able to, even with all this diversity and the visual and mental and the ways of thinking, and I think it influenced my work too, because each time I moved, I think my artwork changed too. But at the time I was not realizing it. It was important for me when I wanted the book done, this book, was in a way make a document. I wanted to document my process, and when I chose it was my idea to put Porto, Paris, New York, because I think it had an influence on these cities where I live, an influence on who I am, and therefore what I do. So I think there's definitely a connection.
So my question dovetails very nicely with what you've just been talking about. First off, I'm thrilled to be able to see the number of paintings downstairs, and I encourage everyone who's watching on Facebook to actually come and look at the original paintings, because to me they are, one of the main attributes is that they are layering. They are layering, and this just occurred to me as you were talking today, that it is the layering of all those cities and all the sensibilities of those cities, as well as a layering of media. You use different media and you layer them into a completed artwork, and the layering of different traditions, the abstract tradition, the realistic tradition in terms of the nature symbols. It's such a melding, and it's so you. So that was my, that was my aha in realizing that Porto, Paris, New York were part of that layering that you do in terms of media and your final artwork.
Thank you, Nancy, for seeing that. Thank you.
We have a question on Facebook.
Okay, so when
Okay, so it's Marla. First I said Maria, but it's Marla Briscoe Benton. So she's asking, do you have a favorite piece or a piece that means the most to you? Marla was born in Fayal, Azores.
So she has one particular piece.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's very difficult to choose one artwork of mine. She's asking about my artwork.
Yes.
I have sometimes works that I'm more attached, not because they are better or nicer, because I make them, but sometimes it's because it reflects a moment that eureka moment. I said, I made this, and now I'm going to do that. Some kind of discovery. Not that it's there, but it's because they mark a moment in time that this is important, because then after this I did this and that. So I have a few of those. That it's not one, I have maybe a few, but for those reasons. They are markers in a parkour. We do this way and certain things are there and remind you, okay, I did this and then I jump to something else. So I don't have a particular artwork that I don't. Maybe there are a few that maybe are more easy to love, but the ones that are difficult to love probably are the ones that are more interesting. So I leave it at that.
Yeah, so what I have is not a question, it's an observation, just to complement what you said, that I feel like your artworks are like portals or windows that invite me to contemplate and travel with you and listen. It's almost they have music, they have lyrics, they have color, and they invite you to travel on your path. So they're beautiful.
Thank you.
So we have another question here on Facebook from Maria Margarida Marinho Moreira, and she's asking, I would like to know if Isabel Pavão likes to explore digital tools in her creative process.
Thank you for that question. It's a very good one. I'm not good with digital. I'm a Cro-Magnon, let's say. I cannot really do amazing things, which tends to be my favorite, because the way I use digital is very, how to say, primitive. Sometimes I photograph what I do, and I print, and I repaint, and I rework. I know people who do that in Photoshop. For me, it would be impossible, and I'm thankful it's very impossible, because I put glue instead of making copy-paste, and I go and try to do something with my, crayon, or use pastel, and then put some acrylic, and then maybe, so I'm not good at all with digital. I use it a little bit, but not at that level. I use my phone sometimes to photograph something, or a camera, and then to print it and to rework on something else. It's more a tool of work, but I'm not good with that, thankfully. In my case.
Is there any other question from the audience, please? Mark?
Yeah, I'm interested in following up a little bit on your collaborative process and really what that is. Is it the case that either, for example, if there's a poem, there's the poem first, which has been done in a solitary way by the poet, and then the artist works in a solitary way on an expression in response to that? Or is it a kind of iterative process where both works are in gestation at the same time, influencing each other as they're being created? For example, the way a composer might be working on a piece and consulting with a performer in developing it.
Mark, thank you. I have different experiences in my collaborations. The first one I did with poet known Judas. I like his poetry immensely. It inspires me. And he invited me to do some work with him for a magazine at the Gulbenkian Foundation, and it was with another poet. So the question came, I said, why don't we do something together, me and Nuno, Judas? And he's a very well-known poet. And he tells me, yes, Isabel, it's a good idea. And I said, Nuno, why don't you write, maybe, and then we see what we can do. And he says, no, you do the paintings and then let me see what I can do. So I was extremely anguished because I was dealing with a man that really is very, very good writer, well known, and I was, what can I do that I was afraid he might not like it. I had to deal with that anguish. So I kept on delaying. I would keep all kinds of excuses, oh, this and that, and finally I sent in a few some works, and he chose and he wrote marvelously. One of them is downstairs. Is the sea butterfly. He wrote a beautiful poem. That with Catherine we had a different. She's here. She can attest for it. We had a totally different thing. Both of us wanted to work together, do something, and we met and we came out with an idea, right? Both of us, and different stages of love and loss, and so on. Actually, we started, and then we had the whole thing. She's very organized, so we had it so very organized. What was the cadence, how to do things, but it was just a scheme we did together, right? So same story. I am anguish. We did that. I said, okay, now let's see what happens. And when I was thinking about it, and then I did some work based on those concepts. Both of us worked. And I sent it to her. Said, this is a start. This is the scratching the surface. And she looked at them and she said, "Oh, I love it. No, let's not touch it much." And then we talked, and she was writing, and I was finishing my artwork. So it was really intertwined. But it's very. That's her own writing on her own. That's her poetry, and that's my painting. So it's more of a dialogue. It's not so much one illustrating the other. That I don't think ever happened. It's one in a dialogue with each other. With the Judice, it was the same. It ended up being the same. It's a dialogue. So it's that sense of being individual but going together into something, and that is fascinating. It's been very rewarding. So I don't know if I answered, but that's so far. It's because I think with each collaboration, it's a different experience. You know, but the idea is always to have individual artwork and poetry or writing or painting and having this dialogue. That's what I'm interested in. It works that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question here in the room? Here on Facebook we don't have. I'm just going to ask you maybe one last question. If there is no other questions here in the room, that sometimes I ask about. You want to have a question? Oh, you have a question?
I also have a question, but
Oh, sorry, no, you go ahead.
Okay.
I will leave this for you.
Thank you. Hola, Isabel.
Olá.
A little close. Sorry to wait. The question I have, we're going on 2+ years of a pandemic, and what I'm curious of is, in the last 2 years, how has it affected your life and your work as an artist? Has this time and these times have you focused on existing projects? Has it challenged you or forced you to look at new projects? How have you coped?
Actually, I have to say that during the pandemic, initially, of course, it's hard because we have plans and they don't go what we like, and many constraining situations. But for me, it was very useful, and I was very lucky because I could create new things. So I had time to contemplate and start new things and work at them without being distracted, not worried about if people love it or not. It was not. It was me doing something new. And actually, I think you saw them. You are one of the only people that really saw what I was doing. That Yes, yes. But that's what I'm working on. So I think it was very productive, and it changed me. I think it changed me because what I'm doing now is a little bit different from what you see downstairs on in a retrospective exhibition. But maybe 10 years from now, it all looks like a natural way of doing things. But definitely, I had more time, and it changed me in some ways. But maybe it's too early to tell how.
Isabel, I wanted to ask you. So you are an established artist. You have a career that has been going for some time now. And I always like to ask these questions because some people can be singers and be artists, but they don't they don't know how to do. Do you have any advice for amateur artists that are just starting?
Well, I can say only from my experience that it's important to do what you love. Have a passion, work at it. And like any other passions are not always easy. There will be constraints. You have to probably persevere. I tell to new artists, please go to museums. Please look at what others do. Try to see, because by seeing you learn. Even if you have to copy a little bit, but then you come up with your own language. That's the point. This is based on my experience, so that doesn't mean that this is a recipe, but certainly believing and trying to create new things, take risks, is good to take them. Sometimes being uncomfortable can be very productive, and don't give up, because sometimes you think the door is closing and you cannot find what you want, but eventually, if you keep at it and you work, and something, you will be happy with yourself is the most important thing, and that would be about it. You know, work it, keep going, don't lose hope, and enjoy also.
Yeah, that's important. So if we don't have any other questions here, as the ambassador said earlier, you are all very welcome to visit Isabel Pavão's exhibition at the Embassy of Portugal in Washington, D.C. until March next year. You have the opportunity to see the book and maybe acquire it. And we will continue the event downstairs now. But if you want the book to be signed or to talk to Isabel, you are free to come here. And I would like to thank you very much, Isabel, first of all, and everyone that is here and on Facebook as well, to be here this evening with us. And I would just like to advertise to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Portugal in the US. Thank you very much.
Thank you.